So 2D lists, nested for loops, they kind of go hand in hand. You think about how that data is organized. We have both, right? So let's go back to our code. Let's go ahead and print out our, in fact, let me get some space. And just print, oops, W data. Okay, so we have our data. Now I want to print this out, and I don't want this in. This is not helpful for me. I want a different format. Let's say somebody came up to you and said, I want you to print out all this data. I want you to print out all the values for San Diego. Okay, and I want you to put them all in a line. So one after another. And then I want you to draw a line. And then I want all the values for Anaheim. And one another line. And then I want all the values for Vegas. I want it to look like that. So we want to be able to print in this new format. We need a way to access each and every element in this two-dimensional list. And so we have to iterate through every element in the list and print out each value one at a time. And then we have to print out a line. So to do that, we have to access each element in the list. So if we look at this, right, we have this, right? Actually, let's look at our table real fast. When we're actually thinking of two-dimensional lists, it helps to think of, what color am I not using? Think of these as rows. This is row 0, row 1, and row 2. Think of these as rows. And then we have columns. Column 0, column 1, 2, 3, and 4. We have this thing of rows and columns. You think about how Excel or a Google Sheet looks, right? Is rows and columns across the top and rows across the left. And if we think of a two-dimensional list like this, right, it helps us to visualize it better. So now we have row here, 0, 1, 2, and each row has a column, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So now I want to know how to access each and every row. So now we can figure that out. We know where the rows are. And when we access a row, we're going to get the whole row at index 0. And then we'll get the whole row at index 2. And then you get the whole row at index 3. So we can easily iterate over the rows. So print out my data, but then we're going to actually do, I'm just going to hard code. We know there's 3 rows, and I'm just going to print out, I'm using R, by the way, for row. You can type in row, R or row. Row might make a little more sense. I'm using R. And we run this. And what happened? It actually worked, but I want to put in some blank lines because it's a little hard to read. Okay, so we have our W data up here, and we printed out the row for San Diego. We printed out the row for Anaheim. And we printed out the row for Las Vegas. Okay, so we can get the rows, but I want to go one level deeper. I don't want just the rows. I want the individual temperatures for a particular city, one city at a time. And so to do that, I need to access the column. And so when we're in a particular row, we want to go through each column for that row. So to do that, we use C. We have 5 columns. We know we have 5 columns, and we're just going to print out. And how do I do that? Well, we were doing that in the thing. We just, in the polls, right? We print out the data for the row and the column. We're indexing through row and we're indexing through column. And we run it, and I'm still, oops, we're still printing out the row itself, but now we'll see. Now we'll see them printed out in a line. Look at that. So here's the row, 77, 77, 76, 74, 73. Here's Anaheim's row, 85, 85, 70, 81, and here's Las Vegas row, and it's printing them all out. So we're getting closer. Of course, we really don't want the row to print in the beginning, right? But here's how we're actually accessing the elements of a two-dimensional list. We have the row, which gives us the initial list. So each R is a row. And then we have the column, which gives us the individual element of that list. So here's a list, and then we want all the individual elements of that list by passing in the column as an index. Okay, so we really don't want to print out the row. So here's print out with just the elements. And now we have all the elements. There's San Diego, there's Anaheim, there's Las Vegas, but that's not quite what we wanted. Remember, we really wanted to put a line between them. So to do that, after this inner loop ends, not inside of it, but after it ends, but inside the outer loop, because every city is going to get a line. Just print out a whole bunch of those, and maybe a few more. So once we come out of the inner loop, we're going to print this line out. Oops, that's the wrong. And so the inner loop is going to print the numbers, and then we get a line, and then we loop back, we print out more numbers, and then a line, and print it back and more numbers, and then another line. So now we're able to print out each and every city's data separated by lines, which was what we were trying to do here. So we managed to do it so far. But to really understand what's going on here, how would split work? I'm not sure how you could use a split method. Split method works on strings. I don't know if there's a split method for a list. If you do it on a string, it just gives you a list of stuff. And we already have lists of stuff, so we really don't want to use split to do this. We could join stuff together, but I want them on separate lines, not the same line. So let's print out some extra data. Instead of printing out all of this right now, I want to print out some extra data. Actually, I'll leave that there for now. I'm just going to put another print statement here. I want to print out the row value. Print out the column value. Print out the value that's actually printing, which I need to make sure I convert it to a string so we can concatenate, and that's RC. Oh, that's actually going to have to go inside of the loop, though. That's not going to go in here. That's going to go there. So basically, I'm just replacing it. I want to print out R, C. I forgot to put C in here. So print out the row, print out the column, and print out the value simultaneously, all inside a single statement. And we do a quick print, and I need to put in some spacing, but other than that, we're pretty close. So let me fix the spacing. Let me just put something in between. There's a little character called the pipe. Print it out. And so now we can see everything being printed out. And we can see what's happening here with the code. Let's look at both simultaneously. And so the very first time through the loop, R is 0. And we know R is 0 because it's printing out zeros. And then it goes to the inner loop. And it goes to the inner loop 0 through 4. And it prints out a different number of this first list through the inner loop. So we get the value 77 because that's 0, 0. Another 77 for 0, 1. 76 for 0, 2, 74 for 0, 3, and 73 for 0, 4. And then the inner loop ends because we printed all 4 or 5 values. We print the line, and then we start over. We increment from 0 to 1 inside of the range. And then we're in R1. And for all of R1, we print out all of its columns. And then after that's done, we print a line. and then we go to R2, row 2, and then for all of R2, we print all of the columns, and then we print another line. And so using nested loops, we're able to access every element in a two-dimensional list. Just using this double bracket notation here. Now, there's a problem here. What if I wanted to change the number of cities? Unfortunately, we've hard-coded this to 3. It's not a good idea. Instead, we should actually get the length of the list. This is going to return the number of elements in the outer list. So this is 3. I could add a 4th one, and this would actually now work. We should do the same thing for the columns. What if we wanted to change from 5 days to 7-day columns? We can now get the length of the current list, which is the one that's in this particular row. And so when R is 0, you'll get the length of this list, which is 5. R is 1, you'll get the length of this list, which is 5. And then R is 2, you'll get the length of this list, which is now 5. So now we have a more generalized version that should still run the same. Yeah, it didn't change anything, right? And now I can easily come in here and I can add another city. And I'm just going to make up some numbers. And make sure I close that list. And if I run, this actually should continue to work, except now I should get an R3. So now this more general version allows us to continue adding or removing data, and it will continue to work for any type of thing right here. So we really don't want to hard code data in here. If we hard code the 3, we would actually stop and not actually printed that 4th row. We would have stopped at the first 3. And so it's better when you write loops if you can avoid hard coding the data and just use the length